All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. My name is Victoria Angulo. I am the head of growth and university relations here at CodePath. This is our fourth installment of our Black Excellence Leadership Series. And here at CodePath, we've just been so excited to be able to chat with such incredible individuals from the tech community, both on the VC side, on the nonprofit side, from the industry side, just throughout. So we're extremely excited to be able to share these speakers and their knowledge with all of you today, and they're very excited to share with you as well. Before we get started, I just want to go ahead and set some ground rules. So I will ask you all for the first 45 minutes to just have your mic on mute as we just go through the conversation that these two wonderful speakers will be leading. And then after the 45 minutes, we'll open up the floor to questions. You can unmute your mic. Also feel free to drop some questions in the chat. I will also be sharing some links that Dwana wants you all to have in a bit. So without further ado, I will go ahead and hand it off to my colleague, Emily Chong, who's the head of marketing here at CodePath.
Thank you, Victoria. Hi, everybody. Good morning and good afternoon. I think by now, since this is the fourth installment, many of you have either heard my voice or perhaps received an email from me. But as Vic mentioned, I lead marketing communications here at CodePath. And what that means is we're looking to expand our course offerings to serve more underrepresented minority students across the US. I'm super excited to have the honor to introduce our guest speaker today, Dwana Franklin-Davis. And last night when I was on the Reboot Representation website, this is a line that I pulled from their website. And that is, Dawana is someone you want on your team. She is the CEO of Reboot Representation, which is a coalition that is committed to doubling the number of Black, Latinx, and Native American women receiving computing degrees by 2025. Dawana attended Purdue University. So if we have any Purdue students, please give a shout out. She attended Purdue for her undergrad degree and was originally planning to major in computer science. However, as the only Black woman in class, she found the CS experience difficult and lacking support and inspiration. Eventually, Dawana switched out and majored in management/MIS instead. Despite not majoring in CS, she persisted throughout college and built up relevant experience through 3 summer internships, which ultimately, it was the culmination of all those experiences that helped her land a full-time job offer from IBM. After IBM, Dawana went to Washington University. Again, if we have any students from there, please give a shout out. And she earned her master's degree in information management. She also spent 13 years at MasterCard and rose up through the ranks in various software engineering roles. She identifies with the challenges of being an underrepresented woman in tech, and she is proud of her success despite those challenges. Dawana enjoys being a mentor, a coach, and sponsor, and has a true passion for enabling environments to be more diverse and inclusive and empowering everyone to thrive in them. So quite the bio, but I want to officially welcome Dwana Franklin-Davis to our CodePath Black Excellence Leadership Series.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So Dawana, wanted to kick off the conversation today. When you and we spoke and you sort of shared a little bit about your challenges with CS, I think many of our students can also identify with, what we just shared here. Can you share, can you expand on your story and, perhaps start off with how you discovered your interest in tech, how you persisted, and, just let everybody hear, what your story was like from you?
Sure. So my story starts with my family, actually, which it's funny because I was exposed to tech at a very early age, and I thought that was normal because that was just what my family did. My dad worked for a company called Valley Electronics, and he also worked for Atari. So when I was growing up, we had Pac-Man everything. So old school, back in the day, Pac-Man stuff. And it was when computers were not even a thing and people didn't necessarily have them in their homes. We had multiple computers in our homes because my father would build them, and he was very active with Boy Scouts, and started a scouting troop at our church. And as one of the missions that he had, he made sure that all of those boys, who were all Black and brown boys, they learned how to build their own computers, and they each got to take them home. And that was the first computer that most of them had in their home. So all of that type of stuff was normal to me. My mom was an analyst at a technology company. And although she wasn't hands-on tech, she was still immersed in it, working for a tech organization. And again, that was just stuff that was normal to me. And so my parents would do things like have me talk to their coworkers or come in for job shadowing and things like that. So when it was time for me to choose a major, I got advice from my parents that said, you know, do you like the lifestyle that we lead? And I was, yeah, it's fine. Do you want more for yourself? B, yes. So choose a major that is going to provide the wealth and opportunity that you want for your future, because you won't be living here. So I had so much exposure to computers, I chose computer science. And when I chose computer science, I didn't actually know what that meant at the time. I knew that I loved tech. I knew that there were a lot of different aspects to tech, but I didn't know, I had taken a couple of programming classes in high school, but I didn't know what exactly that meant. So that was how I chose the path to tech. And Purdue University at the time was ranked number 4 in computer science. I'm from Illinois, so I wanted to be out of state, but still close to home. So Purdue was only a couple hours away, and I'm a top-ranked school at the time. So that's how I landed at Purdue.
Great. Wanted to sort of ask you a question. In your bio, you mentioned that you found the CX experience to be difficult. Can you talk a little bit about that and how you found the CS experience?
Yeah. Being at a predominantly white institution, but an amazing school, I was the only African-American woman in my incoming freshman class. There were 2 African-American males in my class, and one did not graduate or didn't finish the semester. The other didn't finish the year. They both ended up leaving Purdue. So it was kind of an isolating experience being the only. And then in addition to that, although I had taken programming classes in high school and had exposure to it, it was hard, and adjusting to college life, and you know, it's computing, so of course it's not meant to be easy, but I found myself having challenges with regards to the classes, challenges with regards to the lack of a network, lack of a support group, lack of access. And all of my friends were loving their majors and loving what they were doing, and looked like they were having way more fun than I was with regards to classes. So it just was not an enjoyable experience. There was one upperclassman that was a Black female in computer science, and she and I connected, and we actually we went and had our internships together. So the summer after my freshman year, summer after my sophomore year, we both interned with IBM down in Raleigh, North Carolina, which was an absolutely amazing experience. And I think had it not been for those internship experiences, I probably would have changed my major a lot earlier than what I did. But I loved the work environment, and I loved, IBM's culture at that time was very nurturing culture for interns. I was learning a lot, and I love that aspect, but I wasn't programming in either of in my first one I wasn't, in my second one I did program in Java. But I found that environment to be a better environment than what I was experiencing in my education. And so when I came back junior year and I was sitting in my Java programming class, and I was like, I already did this because I did it over the summer. It just wasn't exciting. And I walked out of class 3 weeks into the semester to my guidance counselor office, and I changed my major to business. And because I had so much computing, I have a minor in MIS in computer science. So I still love tech and I was still very passionate about it, but what my internship showed me was that I could explore the people side of my passion, because I'm definitely a people person. And I wasn't seeing that in how that translated from the educational side, what I was learning. So I thought that with a business degree, I could marry tech with my passion for business. And I had one more internship after that, which was also back in the tech space, which was awesome. And so because of all of my experience in tech, thankfully, I was still able to have a successful, prosperous technology career.
Got it, thank you. So Dawana, many of our students are participating in our summer technical interview prep class. So they're preparing to land those internships that you were just talking about, or perhaps even prepare for full-time job offers. What did you do to land? I mean, getting 3, I think even for a college student is a lot. First of all, like, how did you land those internships? What did you do? You know, can you tell us more?
Yeah, for sure. So the first internship led to the second internship, if that makes any sense. So I am a freshman, and I think most students probably intern after their sophomore year, not necessarily after their freshman year, so that was rare. But it was first semester of my freshman year. I don't even have that much experience as a student, and I get a phone call from an HR representative from IBM, and she says, I got your name from, and she named the counselor, and I want to offer you a summer internship with IBM this coming summer in Raleigh, North Carolina. And I was like, yes. Hung up the phone, and I was like, I don't even know where Raleigh is. Let me pull up a map. Called my mom, and she was like, you did what? No. I was like, I already said yes. So I kind of say that one fell in my lap, but the reality is that because of not just being involved in doing well in my classes, because that's kind of a basic and a given, I was the guidance counselors in the science department knew me, and so I was making them aware of what I wanted to do and how I wanted, what my interests were and things like that. And so when IBM called the guidance office and said, we're looking for students, I was top of mind. So being present, and that lesson actually will carry you through when you have corporate jobs as well, but you don't ever know where your connections are going to come from. So you always have to work building your brand and building your network. And I didn't even realize at that time that that's what I was doing, but that was just how my mom and dad had operated with regards to, we'd walk in the building, she'd be grabbing stuff off the bulletin boards, and you have to know what's going on. You have to go meet these people. And me at the time didn't appreciate it, but she was right. And so it's you knowing them and them knowing you. And then when opportunities became available, you are top of mind. And so the second internship was also with IBM. And I thought I wanted to get experience at another organization. I wanted to try some other things, and nothing was turning up from the job fairs. And so it was getting close to time where, most companies were like done selecting their candidates, and I didn't have an internship. So I called my old boss and I was like, can I come back? And they were like, well, I don't have anything, but there's another team. And so I went back to Raleigh, North Carolina, still working for IBM, completely different team, completely different experience. And it was also, a great opportunity. So because I did so well on my first internship, I built the network with the people at IBM, and I maintained the relationships. It wasn't a big deal for me to call them back and then be like, of course, come back.
Got it. Did you ever go to your parents and say, I didn't realize it was so hard?
I should do that when I see them this weekend. No. I don't think that I have. I think that, we were just taught to do well and persist. And, my family dynamic was different in the sense that at the time I went to college, neither one of my parents had degrees, and my mom had a goal. It was her goal to graduate before I did, and she did. She graduated 1 year before I did. which was, but I was also in school for 5 years. So had I graduated in 4, we would have graduated the same year. So I think that because my parents didn't necessarily have that direct experience with regards to the experiences I was going through, I didn't feel like that was something that they could help me with or that they could relate to. They worked hard. They've worked hard their entire lives, but they just hadn't gone through that experience.
Okay, got it. So is there anything that you would have done differently if you had to do this all over again? Rewind and go back to Purdue?
Rewind. So I don't regret anything that happened or what I did, because I think that my path has been an amazing learning experience. And I think had I done anything different, I wouldn't be the CEO of Reboot Representation. But what I wished for a younger version of myself, and what I wish for all the students that are able to watch this, is that I had more exposure to the possibilities of what I could have done earlier. I think that had I known more about what I could have done with that computer science degree, I would have stuck with it and I wouldn't have changed my major. I think that I still ended up in the same place. Like when I graduated and I had my first job, all the guys that I was working with, there were 7 of us that came in as college hires. I was the only woman, I was the only person of color. And all those guys had computer science degrees, and I can do everything that they can do, but I had a higher learning curve because they took those classes and they had already achieved that stuff. So I still had to learn it, but I just had to learn it later. So had I known where I could have taken it with regards to exposure to different jobs or different things that I wanted to lend to in my career, I probably would have stayed with it.
Got it. So let's talk about your career. So you spent many years at IBM, MasterCard, and other large corporations. So some of our students have submitted questions, and what they would love to know is, as a person of color and as a woman, how did you rise up through the ranks? How did you break that glass ceiling?
So probably like many minorities, many first-time students, many immigrants, you're told by your family to work hard. And I did that. My grandmother was always like, you're Black, you got to work 3 times as hard as everybody else to be seen on the same level. So I worked hard, but I quickly realized that working hard is not enough, because everybody works hard. You're supposed to work hard. When I do reviews and have done reviews in the past of my employees, it's not enough to just do your job. You're expected to do your job. You're expected to do a good job at your job. So it's what I like to call the and what else. And what else? What else are you doing that sets you apart? What else are you doing that adds skills to or tools to your toolbox? What extra projects have you volunteered for? What leadership opportunities have you taken advantage of? And are you displaying those leadership skills? And in addition to that, and what else? Who knows about it? So it's not also enough for your boss to know about it or your professor to know about it. In a work setting, do your boss's peers know about it? Being able to participate in different things around the organization, then you're building that and what else across the organization. And that is what helped me to move and rise throughout all the organizations that I've been part of.
Got it. I want to go back to what you mentioned earlier, which was building your brand, and how this is something that I think for many of our students, it's not the very first thing that they think of. I suspect. I think many of our students, they're trying to take as many courses, trying to land those internships, trying to volunteer. But building a brand, I know at least for myself, I didn't realize the importance of this until I was in the working world, and just learned that over the years. Can you talk about why that is so important, and how can a college student start building his or her brand early on?
Yeah. What clubs and activities are you part of? You guys are all part of CodePath, so that's definitely a big start, right? But what are you leading? What's making you stand out? So one of the things that, like when I'm interviewing candidates, right, especially for a technical role, there's all the same words in there. You've all taken the same programming classes and all that, and for the most part, you can like stack the resumes up and hold them up to the light, and they're carbon copies of each other. Okay, so what is that extra thing that you've done? You were president of said organization. You led this community service activity. What are those extra things while you're in college that are going to help you not just have the same carbon copy resume as your peers? And internships are also one of those things that you want to add to that. You want to have that extra work experience, because not only because you're building your resume, but exposure to an organization is going to help you determine the things that you like and the things that you don't like. You're gonna be working for a really long time, so it helps you to kind of get a feel for what type of corporate environment do you want to be in. And now it's even more challenging because everybody's working from home. But what is that? Does the corporate culture that you're going to be part of have your same values and have your same the things that you care about? Do they support you being your full self in the workplace or in a remote environment? So really being able to realize your worth and set yourself apart and be okay with talking about your achievements and your success. That's another thing that a lot of women and minorities, they feel they work really hard, but they don't like to talk about it. Or don't know how to boast about it. And it's okay to be able to talk about your achievements and your success in a way that's not bragging and that's not boasting, but still sells yourself and sells your character and sells you as a brand.
Mm-hmm. Got it. So I am going to ask this question just because it's so relevant to what we're just talking about today. Nadia just, dropped a question in the chat, and what she said was, as a PhD student in biology, I use data science all the time, but I'm finding it very difficult to compete with traditionally trained CS students to land an internship. How can I convince them to hire me versus someone who might have stronger technical skills than me?
Sure. Great. That's a great question. So first, I'm going to say there's always going to be somebody that has more skills on paper than you do. There's always going to be someone. What you're wanting to do is to have an organization see you for the additional value that you're going to bring to the table, because anybody can learn anything. Anybody has the ability to learn anything, so you can come up to speed quickly. So as you're trying to build that on paper potential, so you can do that through special projects, through volunteering, through online classes, things like that, through your network, through I did this side project online and here's an example of it. So you can build that online credibility because anybody can learn anything. But CS and tech transcends industry. So that PhD in biology is gonna set her apart and have like extremely different skills than what someone who's just focused on CS. So really focus on how you can sell it, basically. Know what your qualities are, be confident in them, and that is that added value to whatever organization that you're applying for, that you're going to bring, and they should hopefully be able to see, wow, she doesn't have this, but she definitely has the ability to learn, and she's going to be able to come up to speed quickly.
Great. Thank you. So I want to shift the conversation a little bit now to race. And in early June, you published a number of articles on Medium, articles such as "The next wave of tech equity starts now." Also, what does Juneteenth mean to you? And you had a lot of articles with call to actions that were directed at the tech companies. A, what were you hoping to accomplish with these articles? And two, how can our students play a role to support those call to actions to fight for better workplaces by the time they graduate and enter the real world?
So I, like many, were experiencing my own emotions as the world was changing around me. And it was a little bit infuriating for me to see the in solidarity statements that companies were putting out there. We support Black people, we're in solidarity with you, and you look at their numbers and they got 2% Black people. You can keep that yourself. I don't care what you just said. You don't have any Black people in your organization. So it was infuriating to me. So I get on my soapbox with regards to, be real about it. Nobody wants to hear your fake in solidarity statement. What are you doing? So that's what those posts were about. Because inquiring minds want to know. All the people on this call, you want to know, you want to work for an organization that's going to value who you are, regardless of your race and your color and your anything. You want to be able to be innovative and be creative and contribute to the environment and have them appreciate you for what you're bringing to the table. So when I saw that, I was angry, and I was like, nope. Using the Reboot platform so that I can say, what are you doing? Start with these things. There's a million things that they can be doing, but start with these things. Those were the call to actions. And then also there's a lot with regards to people of color and women, where some of the onus has been on expecting people of color to change themselves to fit in, or to modify to fit into some type of corporate culture, when really the corporate culture should be celebrating these differences. And there's all these numbers and metrics about, companies generating more revenue and being more innovative when they have diverse teams. We know all that, but they don't reflect that. So it was a call to action to hold them accountable for the empty statements that were being placed out there. So Reboot's a coalition of tech companies. We have 15 on the website. There's actually 17, which will be announced in the coming weeks. 2 more will be announced. And we have quarterly meetings. That we just had a meeting last week with the companies. And you best believe I was like, hey, yo, let's talk about this. So I gathered all of the statements that they put out there. I put them in one spreadsheet. You said this, and I didn't call them out in the meeting, but when we have our one-on-ones coming up, yes, I'm gonna call them out in a one-on-one. Some of them are doing a great job, and some of them are like, yep, we know our numbers suck, but here's our plan. And it's a real plan for what they're trying to do to increase representation and increase diversity. Every company is in a different place and along this journey. And I just want companies to acknowledge where they are. And none of them are doing great. So, okay, acknowledge where you are. And let's talk through, are you real about moving forward? Are you real about actually getting better? Don't give me lip service. And none of my students or anybody that I talk to or mentor wants to have empty promises. You want to work at an organization that's like, yep, I own it. I saw the word accountability. I'm accountable for it. I'm taking action. We're going to get better.
Mm-hmm.
So from a student perspective, to answer that second part of the question, what can students do? As you guys are going on your internships, and as you enter into these companies, you can also hold them accountable. You can also, you shouldn't be at an organization where you feel like you can't be yourself and you can't bring yourself to the table, because hopefully you were hired and recruited because of that value that you're going to add. So you shouldn't feel a need to not bring all of that to your workplace. So be in a position where you can recommend diverse candidates to a slate. If you're in a position where you have colleagues or friends, diverse candidate slates are something that all students can definitely help with. Being able to be members of business resource groups, employee resource groups, adding that value and working through diversifying your companies internally. And then when they actually look for the how can I help, and it's not just lip service, volunteer. It's okay to volunteer. I had a conversation with a mentee yesterday, and she is the only Black woman of color on her team, and she was asked to lead the charge to recruit more diverse candidates. And she's like, I feel tokenized. How can I use this to my advantage? And so there is a line between, yes, she's the only, and her boss doesn't know what to do. And yes, he wants her help. And so that's a baseline and starting point. But this is extra work that she will be doing above what her job description is. So that should be something that she's acknowledged for when it comes review time. And it best believe be something that she's compensated for when it's come bonus time. And if it's not, then that's a whole nother conversation. So I'm like, make sure you are using this to your advantage. Yes, help, because they need your help, but use it to your advantage with regards to how are you continuing to build your network. Who else knows that you're doing this? So again, what I just said, her boss knows, but her boss's boss needs to know, and her boss's peers need to know. And because when it comes calibration time, they can be like, oh yeah, remember so-and-so, she did all that stuff and it turned out, whatever, great. It's gonna turn out great because she's great. So, but it's not just her doing all this extra work without being acknowledged for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I thank you for sharing that, because I have spoken with other folks who become sort of like the person of color spokesperson on behalf of their organization, and when they don't receive compensation for it, or at least some form of reward for it, it just becomes it's not a healthy relationship. I want to ask another question that our students had submitted. So think back to when you were more junior in your career, or perhaps as advice to our students, how do you find more people how do you find more people in and connect with the African American tech community?
I searched long and hard. When I was at Purdue, I was a member of NSBE, National Society of Black Engineers. Most of them were engineers and not in computing, but it was still a great network with regards to people going through a tough education and, just networking and all that kind of stuff. So find your campus groups that, so there's a lot more groups than what there was when I was in college. So there are a number of different groups, but those groups also move into your professional career. So NSBE also has a professional leg of their career. I was president of an organization called Black Data Processing Associates, BDPA, and they have 42 chapters across the country. I was president of the St. Louis chapter. And that focused on Black professionals in computing. And I was an active member, but from just participating in what could I get from the network. And my journey changed when I became the president, because now I was the face of the St. Louis organization. It put me in a different place with regards to networking with Black executives in St. Louis. It also put me in a different place with regards to talking to organizations outside of the one that I worked for, as I was trying to build programming for the organization. So get involved. There's lots of organizations that you can get involved in, but don't just show up, lead something, drive something.
Great advice. Let's talk about microaggressions in the workplace.
Ooh.
I know that's a pretty heavy one, but one of our students sent in a question yesterday and wanted to know, how do you deal with microaggressions? Which I think is a really important question to ask and help our students navigate, because it's not always easy to spot, and wanted to kind of see how you would deal with it and what advice you would offer to our students.
That has been a true journey for me throughout my career and life. I came from a family that is loud and vocal, and I had to learn how to not be that in the workplace all the time. Not that I couldn't be my full self, but there's a time and place. And early in my career, I didn't do well with microaggressions, and I called them out in a horrible way that made people uncomfortable, and that's okay sometimes. So I now in my later stage of career, I know when I'm making people uncomfortable, and if it's because they have in the wrong, then I am perfectly okay with that. But I don't I had a time in my career where I responded to something and I set the bridge on fire. And what I mean by that is I burned down the network, I burned down the opportunity, the future opportunities. And in the midst of me doing it, I was like, I know I can't, if I do this, I can't ever go back. And then I was like, that's all right. It's just going to have to be that way. And my older self would have handled it a lot differently with regards to, okay, who do I talk to about this? So I think it depends on the type of microaggressions. I mean, I've gone from, you know, we'll talk about hair, right? I've gone from long straight hair to cutting it all off to giant fros and everything in between, right? And hair is, who cares what people's hair looks like? And why is that something that we talk about in the workplace? And why did other people feel the need to comment on what my hair should be or should not be, as an example, right? Let's talk about the quality of my work. Let's talk about the process I just created. Let's talk about the fact that your code sucks and this is what you need to change about it. Let's talk about any of that kind of stuff. But what my appearance looks like has no place in this conversation, right, in the workplace, because we're not friends and we're trying to work together. So it's been a journey for me, I guess, is the short version, dealing with microaggressions. And I had an interesting conversation with a lady at Grace Hopper last year on a bus, and she worked for MasterCard, as did I at the time, but she was Canadian, and I obviously am American. And so she said, Dwana, what do you know, she was talking it through being an engineer and in computer science, and how she didn't experience being the only, and she was a white lady, didn't experience being the only until she got to college. And she wanted to know how I felt and what, if I had a similar experience. And for me, as you kind of heard through my background, I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago. So I've always been the only, or one of the only. And so because I was exposed at an early age to being the only, I had to build tougher skin, and I had to get over that quickly because it just was what it was. And so when I got to college and I was the only, it was a normal, but it was a different kind of isolation than what some students feel, some students of color, some first-time students feel when they go to college, because they may not have been the only when they were growing up. And so that wasn't an extra hurdle that I had to deal with. In addition to that, I also knew what the workplace was going to look like. I've seen my parents' workplaces. And so I was already mentally prepared for what that meant. And unfortunately had experienced more than microaggressions, actual real aggressions throughout my life growing up. And so I have said in the past, I appreciate the upfront racism instead of the one that is like in your face, because at least you know where you stand in the beginning. So in the workplace is challenging. How do you handle it? Hopefully you have a boss or an HR person that is your ally. If the aggressions are coming from your boss, hopefully that is never the case, but most organizations have HR or anonymous hotlines or things like that where you can call or email, or it doesn't have to, some are anonymous, some are not, but organizations now have that type of support where you can report those types of behaviors and they are accurately investigated. Your boss should be your ally, so that in an ideal world should be your first line of defense. But what happens if HR is also corrupt? Tori, good question. HR should not be corrupt. It's HR. HR should most certainly be on your side. So one of the things I say is you have to build relationships and bridges before you need them. You have to build your network before you need it. So if you already have relationships with HR people, then you know who you can trust and who you can't. And so it's a little bit jokingly, but a lot of people sometimes feel like HR is not on their side, and they really should be, and they really are. They really are. So it's hard to confide in somebody if you don't already have that trust. So it sets you up for another layer of discomfort. And so what I'm suggesting as you're building your relationships in your workplace or in your school, with your advisors at school and with your that network at work, then if God forbid something happens and you need someone to talk to, then you have those trusted people you can talk to. You should have mentors in your workplace, mentors, coaches, sponsors. You should have all of that. I know that you mentioned that earlier. And hopefully you guys know what those mentors, coaches, and sponsors provide for you in your career and in your journey. So you can have them as your ally. They're most certainly your allies, and talk to them first if that's your first level of comfort. And so when I was at MasterCard and all my other organizations, as a manager, it's my duty and my responsibility that when somebody tells me something, I now have to do something about it. So if somebody was made to feel uncomfortable in any way, I now have to report that to HR or report that to legal or whatever, depending on what the matter was. So if that person is not your manager, then your mentor, your coach, your sponsor, those should be the people that you most certainly feel comfortable talking to.
Got it. Thank you. And then can you perhaps help clarify in your mind, what is the difference between a mentor versus a coach or are there any differences?
Yes, there's differences. So when you think of your coaches, think of like your sports teams. Those are the people that are cheering you on, they're giving you the advice, they're shouting for you from the sidelines. Your mentors are, in my opinion, they get more in the weeds with things. You have that more personal relationship. They are giving you that go-to guidance. Your sponsors are the ones, if you think about it, who is speaking on your behalf when you're not there, who is your champion behind closed doors, and recommending you for the next opportunity, recommending you for that international job, recommending you for the promotion. And all of those things, well, mentors and sponsors, that takes time to build. That's relationship building for it to be lasting, for it to be add that value. Some organizations will match you, and I think that's fine. But what I've seen is that unless you're working hard to actually build the relationship, then they fizzle.
Mm-hmm. Great.
And it has to be two-way. It has to be reciprocal.
Super valuable lesson. So build a network before you need them, and create, I guess it's your team of coaches, mentors, and sponsors.
Yes, also known as a career board of directors.
Your career board of directors. Love that. Okay, so we are at the 45-minute mark, which means we'd love to open this up for audience Q&A. Vic, do we have any questions from the students?
Yeah, we do. So I wanted to bring up with you a question that Jin asked in the chat. So this is a great question. How do you support yourself mentally, make yourself emotionally self-sufficient during career search?
Great question. So one, don't give up. Career search can be hard because especially when the economy's not good, it's hard. So know your value, know your worth. Don't give up. Start early. I was looking for a job in the crazy economic downturn that happened in 2001, and I actually solidified my first job out of college before that happened. So do not procrastinate. You have to put the time and work in, just like it's a job looking for a job. Mm-hmm. As far as supporting myself mentally, don't work hard at it, just like everything else, but don't beat yourself up over it. I think that especially right now, with so many people out of work, and students are going to be competing with professionals that have been in the industry for a while for maybe the same types of jobs. So I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. There's always going to be somebody more experienced than you, but that's okay. So know what value you're going to bring to the table and be able to articulate that. I also like to call it an elevator speech, which you should be able to say, I do this, and have your spiel ready about what value you're going to bring.
Yeah, great. Love that answer. Thank you so much. There's another question here in the chat that I think is really interesting. What was the hardest aspect of your transition from undergrad to your professional career?
I moved from Purdue University to Connecticut to work for IBM. And I moved to a place where I didn't know anybody. I had no support. I was the only everything, right? And it was great that I was among a hiring class. So there were 7 college hires that were hired at the same time to be on the same team. And that was amazing. But they were all tech guys. And I'm a techie too, but I wasn't that type of tech guy.
Mm-hmm.
So the hard part was learning to adapt to my new environment and finding my place. That I had mentioned earlier with regards to, I didn't have a computer science degree, but I was in a technical role, and all those guys had computer science degrees. So I had that learning curve of all the stuff that I didn't know that they did for fun. So yeah, learning how to ask the appropriate questions, learning how to learn, which is different in a professional setting than it is in school, and learning how to continue to gain momentum and speed and build upon the skills that I had in order to figure out what the next thing was that I wanted.
Yeah, great. Thank you. There's another question in the chat from Trevor. He's asking, as a coworker, what should I do to help someone who's dealing with microaggressions without jeopardizing their job?
Allyship. I think that's what Trevor's talking about. It's okay to speak up for your team members and speak up for your classmates. It's okay. It helps when other people call those things out, when it's not the person who is feeling the microaggression. When somebody else calls that out, then it helps nip it in the bud, and it helps that the person who is facing that challenge really feel like they're welcome in that environment and help to overcome it. There's several basic examples of how people can be allies. So as a coworker, for example, if somebody says something in a meeting, but it's not heard, I don't know whether the person is soft-spoken. Women face this a lot. Soft-spoken, or that it wasn't heard, and somebody else repeats it, and now all of a sudden it's a great idea. As a coworker and an ally, you can say, yeah, when so-and-so just said that, and amplify what so-and-so had just said in order to boost them up. So constantly boosting up your team members. It's not always a competition. So supporting each other, boosting them up, calling out other coworkers for microaggressions. I think all of that is necessary.
Thank you. There's another question in the chat. So student is asking, what are the best ways to learn how to learn?
Great question. So you're going to figure that out a little bit in college, maybe, but I am a visual learner. And so I need to see it, and I need to touch it. And if somebody's just walking me through it, I am not going to learn it. Even if it's whatever the case may be. And I know this about myself. And so making sure that I put myself in the best position to absorb information. I'm also one that needs to write stuff down. And so I learned the hard way early on to take paper and pencil. Now everybody's got iPads and laptops. But I go to a meeting, they'd be like, Dawana, do, and I get back to my desk and be like, oh no, wait, what was the third thing they said I needed to do? So I learned early on that was not how I learned, and being able to make sure that I grab the information that I need. Google is your friend. You're gonna be able to, obviously, that was a basic interview question I used to ask people: how do you learn quickly? And then how do you come up to speed quickly? What do you do when you don't know stuff? And Google is your friend. And so also, if you have a support group, you're part of clubs and organizations, organizations like CodePath especially, where you can ask others about their experiences and have you experienced this before? So that no one is going through anything alone. There's always somebody else who has gone through said thing before you. So you shouldn't have to feel like you are in it alone, and you don't, if you can springboard from somebody else's learning, then that saves you time and effort.
Right, absolutely, thank you. So another question from student Nathando. He's asking, you've spoken on the importance of building a support team. What's the most valuable advice you've received from your support network?
Wow, most valuable. Whew. I have a mentor and a sponsor that I still call to this day. She was instrumental early in my career at MasterCard, and she helped me change my language about how I referred to my job. I was on a huge, insanely huge project, first of its kind, and I was the software infrastructure. I built the software infrastructure for the internal payments platform system, but I wasn't the developer. I was middleware, and I wasn't the project manager, and I wasn't the marketing team, and I wasn't the business team that was selling it and talking to customers. And so when, she was this high-powered executive, and so she'd be like, what do you do? And I'm like, I would say, and I'd hang my head down. And she's like, no, you built the infrastructure that this entire platform runs on. That's significant. So she helped me realize how important what I perceived to be small and minuscule, my contributions were to the project and to the organization. And she also helped me with regards to the fact that, so I'm a founding member of the Black Business Resource Group at MasterCard that launched in 2008. It's because of her that I was a founding member, and I was the most junior founding member, where I had just converted from contractor to employee. I was senior engineer level, and everybody else was higher. And I felt like I was junior. And so I wanted to defer to everybody else. And she was like, I asked you to be part of this team because you have real value to add. And it got me out of the fact that because I was young and because I was junior and because, all the other excuses that I had, she helped me to frame it early, my value and the contributions that I add to the team and to the organization.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. And I just keep hearing the need for mentorship. So that's great. And that's something that's also available for our students. So that's awesome. Thank you. One more question before we wrap up. How do you maintain your authentic self while also feeling you need to assimilate into the work culture as a new hire?
Assimilating into the work culture I hate the word assimilate. I hate it. I really, because I want everybody to be their full selves all the time. I don't want anybody to feel like they have to change any part of who they are to be on my team, because I hired them for the unique talents that they bring. So for me, I lead with that. I lead by bringing my full self to every situation. So everybody knows that I've got two crazy, insane, amazing kids that are now, it's what I do, right? But most of my career, I didn't have kids. I lead with what I do on with my team. I'm an open book for everything and everybody, because it's too hard to compartmentalize who you are. I don't want to do it. And I don't want anybody that works for me to have to do it either. So what does that mean for college hires? You bring a special value to your organization. And being young and recently graduating is part of that value. You are gonna see things in a different light and different perspective that some of your team members are not going to have, or not gonna have that experience. And so it's the differences of experience that are also going to continue to add that value. So don't be shy about sharing it, because that's that added, and what else?
Right, thank you. So I know that students will be excited to keep in contact with you. So I know that you mentioned that you would be willing to keep in touch with them through LinkedIn. You want to maybe we can send a follow-up after with the link
Yep.
to your LinkedIn account, so they can just continue to pick your brain over the years as they go through their career paths.
Please, yes. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I salespeople annoy the heck out of me, so it just when you link in, just I saw you on CodePath. I want to link in. Ask me anything you want about my journey. I'm more than happy to answer any of your questions. But thank you. I want all of you to be awesome and amazing and succeed and springboard. And because the industry needs you.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you so much for your time. This has been extremely insightful. I wanted to ask before we close out, what is, one major thing, or what would you like our students to take away from today's session?
Wow. There's so many things that have been said, but to be your full selves, you're all the time. Don't work for a company that's not going to value you for who you are and the contributions that you can bring, because you have amazing stuff to offer. Know that you're not in it by yourself. So build your network first of all, and then leverage your network to help get you through the tough parts. It's crazy times we have right now, but you guys will have always, my grandmother, you always have your education to fall back on. Nobody can take it away from you. So finish strong and leverage it to be amazing.
Great, thank you. So thank you so much, Dawana, for your time. Thank you so much, all the students who have attended. We will upload this to YouTube as well and just have it. And so thank you all so much for all of your support today and attending. We will also be sending you a follow-up email with some links that Dawana has provided that are very insightful. So thank you for your time, and
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you, Dawana.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.